I found my way to WellSpring by my parents raising me, and I just remember from my early memories always being at WellSpring and nowhere else.
My favorite memory from WellSpring is probably the first Wednesday night that I came to and just getting connected with everyone.
I definitely don't remember like my first time coming to WellSpring because I was an infant. But my favorite part is definitely Wednesday nights. I just love the community and hanging out with my friends and just connecting with those around me for sure.
My favorite memories are Sunday mornings. I help out in the kids ministry and I absolutely love it. Kids love to look up to you and joke with you, so it's really amazing.
My favorite memories are for Wednesday nights whenever you get to hang out with other kids and mentor other kids that are younger than you, and you just find a sense of community at WellSpring.
WellSpring has really helped me get out of some bad relationships and just helped me grow a good friend group.
I think one of the ways that I've been most impacted by WellSpring has been the mentorships that I've formed with people. People mentoring me and me mentoring other people. Just has been really powerful. Learning from others and others learning from me is just a really cool experience.
Before I started coming to WellSpring, I was really lost. I didn't really know what it was like to be a Christian. I didn't know that Jesus loved me no matter what I had done. And throughout this year, WellSpring has really shown me that.
WellSpring has impacted my life by learning from kids more my age instead of just adults, and it's kind of made me feel more loose at church and made me just be able to have a better learning environment.
So one of the first events that I went to was CIY, and that's what has pushed me to help start like getting involved in the church and just trying to help form a good community.
Trips have been incredibly impactful in my life. I've been to multiple CIYs, so just week-long church events, and TCTC, just the weekend events, and also serving at elementary and middle school camps. And those have just been some of the best weeks of my life, just forming just forever like relationships with friends of mine, and also, again, mentoring others. It's just a really cool experience, and it's also made me consider ministry.
As far as trips go, middle school and elementary camp have probably been the most impactful in my life with the most memories. Not only do you grow closer with the kids, but you grow closer with leaders. I know going into the trip we weren't very close with several leaders, and we came out a lot stronger than ever, and just a good time.
These events, such as like lock-ins and camps, I feel like I've gotten more stronger and deeper friendships with kids my age and older and younger kids, learning how to like connect with kids of all ages.
I think the community of WellSpring is just so important. I feel so at home here, and just have friendships that I know will last forever.
I would definitely say since coming to WellSpring, it's helped broaden my understanding of a lot of things, and that's one thing that WellSpring does really good, is it makes sure you understand a topic, that you don't just know it, but you truly understand it.
If you're a middle schooler or high schooler and you're looking for something to do on Wednesday nights, we would love to have you here at WellSpring. I feel like there's a great community full of welcoming kids. We would love to see you.
Come and join us on Wednesday nights at 6:30. We would love to see you there.
Absolutely. It was fun to watch that video and then watch them watch the video, because these guys are the stars of the show. I did notice that none of them said their favorite part about WellSpring was the sermon. I was a little disturbed by that. We'll work on that later. We'll talk about that. I want to take a risk of alienating a few of you this morning, and I don't say that lightly. This morning, and this may not make sense to you at all. It may make a lot of sense to you. There are different Sundays where there's more spiritual resistance, the way I'd like to say it, than others. And I don't know exactly what that is. I don't claim to understand all of that exactly, but there are mornings where you feel like there's more resistance to getting the message out, more resistance to doing what we do than other mornings. And typically, that's because there's somebody that needs to hear something or have some part of the experience of Sunday. Maybe it has nothing to do with what happens on stage, but there's somebody or multiple somebodies that need to get something from God in that morning. And I want to say to you, and again, I know if you don't know me well or if you're new to faith, this may alienate you a little bit, and I'm willing to take that risk. We've had more resistance today than I can remember in a long time. It's thick spiritually, which means to me that somebody, and I'm not sure who or whom, needs to get something from the day, maybe from this message, and I don't know exactly what that is, but But I want us to be aware of that. And if you're a praying person, I want you to pray about that. Not necessarily for me, but pray for the day. And I would love to help if I can help out in any way with any of the people with that. So let me start. So Scott had mentioned there's like if you go to Paris, you carry that experience with you. And how we have experiences we carry with you. The early church had that for sure. We've talked a lot about our church the last 2 weeks. I want us to talk about the original church for a minute. They had watched Jesus teach, which just would have been such a game changer for your faith to see Jesus literally teach and heal and love and care for people. And then they saw him get arrested. They saw the resistance to him from the soldiers and the priests. They saw him getting beaten and then ultimately crucified. And they saw his lifeless body be taken down from the cross, and they saw him get placed in a cave a short distance away. They saw the stone roll in front of his lifeless body. They would have seen all of those things. And then they would have remembered the day or two from Friday night till Sunday morning when all hope was lost during that short period of time. And then they would have remembered hearing the news that he's alive, that we've seen him. And then they each had experiences, many of them, where they saw Jesus alive during those 40 days. And then there was 10 days later after Jesus ascended, they had the time where Pentecost happened. And all these thousands of people had come to Jerusalem to celebrate these Jewish moments, and there had been massive pressure on them because they all assumed they were next. They had watched their leader be killed by the Romans, and they assumed they were next to be crucified. When Jesus told them to pick up their cross, they assumed it wasn't metaphor, like this was coming for us. And they were hiding at times, and they were praying like crazy because they just sensed the pressure mounting. And then as all those thousands of people came together, God created a stir. He made a sound, and tongues of fire came down, this whole supernatural event. And all of this crowd gathered up. But it's important to notice that there wasn't a moment automatically for somebody to say something. And there would have had to been a moment for Peter and the others to look at themselves thinking, we have a decision to make. We can stand up and speak to what's happening right now, which would launch the church, or we can just slink off into the crowd and no one will never know the wiser. And then that moment where they had to make a decision, and Peter steps up and explains to the crowd what happened, ultimately signing his death warrant years later. But thousands of people responded. Thousands of people gave their life to Christ. And 3,000 men were baptized, plus their wives and their kids. Probably the church is now like 10,000 people in day one. And then you have this moment like, well, now what? Like, what do we do now? Like, we don't know where this is going. We don't have the script. We read the first church and we think they've got it all together. They were flying by the seat of their pants. God was leading. God was in charge, and they were along for the ride. And so what do we do now? Acts 2:42 tells us, says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. This wasn't some group project. They weren't organized enough for that. This wasn't a launching of a grand initiative. They didn't know what they were doing. They just devoted themselves individually and as families to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Now, normally when pastors teach this, normally when I've taught this passage, we spend all of our focus on the last four parts. And it organizes well, right? It outlines well. And we're going to talk about those four things today. But I've come to believe there's magic in the first parts of the verse. There's a secret sauce, if you will, a spiritual dynamic in the first part where it says they devoted themselves. They did that individually as families. They devoted themselves. Devoted comes from the Greek word proskartereo, which means to continue to do something with intense effort despite difficulty. They chose to devote themselves. This wasn't a church initiative. This wasn't a church program. This wasn't a church event. They did it. They devoted themselves in spite of the culture, in spite of the pressure, in spite of all of the opportunities they had then as we do now to do any or everything else. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Last week we started our series celebrating our 20-year anniversary, and we looked at the last 20 years together. And this week, week 2 in our series, we're looking at the next 20 years together. And when I had laid that out, weeks and months ago, my plan had been to come to you this morning with some grand initiatives. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what the next year looks like. Here's what the next 18 months looks like. And we're going to do this as a church, and that as a church, and all those things. And I really felt led not to do that this morning. I felt led instead to focus on what individually we need to do as families and individuals, like they did, I think, in the early church, And if the next 20 years is going to rival the last 20, it's going to involve a lot of us individually as families choosing to devote ourselves to the apostles' teaching, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and to prayer. I want to talk to you for a minute about what that kind of devotion will do in your life. And I think a great way to demonstrate that is to introduce you to some friends of mine, Devin and Ashley, and let them tell you their story.
How did you guys find your way here to WellSpring?
Well, that's a fun story. So I was actually an atheist before I came here, and Ashley woke me up one morning wanting to serve and give back to the community in some way, and she found the well, and that led us to WellSpring, the church. And she woke me up one morning and asked, hey, we should go to church this morning, and walked in here completely not expecting to have the experience that I did, but we've been coming ever since.
Yeah, so I was looking for an opportunity to serve with Aiden just as a family, and I grew up serving my community with my grandparents, and in that Google search, WellSpring Christian Church popped up, and I'd grown up going to church, but I would say I was more in line of like being an agnostic, believing there was a God, but I wasn't super secure or didn't have the confidence of who that God was or how he worked. But with that little seed planted of growing up, I felt this pull to come here, and we came and we never stopped coming, and God has definitely showed us who he is and just who Jesus is, and we've been in love with him ever since.
You know, something that really jumps out to me as a memory here is when I got to go to CIY with the high schoolers this last year. Just being a part of everything God was doing in those moments was absolutely incredible, and I love the students here, and it's been a big blessing to me to even be able to serve, and I'm just so thankful that I got involved in that.
Just how the congregation or how church kind of surrounded us in love and blessed our family when I had Josie in me, and we were just going through the pregnancy. We were just blessed with all sorts of hand-me-downs and blessed with encouragement and love, and they threw a baby shower for us, and just that entire process, I really got to see what family meant in a church in a way that I'd never experienced before. So I didn't necessarily come looking for family. I didn't know what I was looking for when I showed up, but I really got to see family in action through a church during that time.
So the impact the church has had in my life, I don't even know where to start with that because it completely changed our lives. I have no idea where I'd be without having founded this church and found Jesus. It has been completely life-changing in all the best ways. God has just transformed our hearts in ways that I never expected to even be possible. And I love this church, and I love all the people in it. It's such a blessing to be a part of it.
I would say before finding this church and finding Jesus, we really looked to the world on how to live, and we'd been together for quite a few years, but we weren't married, and we had Aiden, but we didn't have any children together, and just through finding the church, it just really gave us what truth was and how we should kind of be looking, or what we should be looking to live our lives through. And the more we learned about the Bible, the more convicted we got, and when we obeyed what Jesus was calling us to do, which is to get married, and just how we should be as a husband and wife and a mother and father, we've just been blessed over and over since really just turning our lives over.
So serving is just such an integral part of WellSpring, and even the relationships I've built serving alongside others has been just such an incredible experience. Some of our great friends at the church, we've served alongside them, and getting to give back. I work in the middle school and high school ministries on Wednesday nights, and it's just been so wonderful to be a part of that and watch these kids grow and learn about God.
In terms of serving, I feel like, we've been blessed undeservingly so, just over and over, and so we try to pay those blessings forward to others, and it doesn't feel like it's work, or it really kind of like energizes us.
Just service it'll change your heart to serve others. It really will.
It's been such an honor to walk with them over these last, just as their friend, or these last months and years. And if you know them, you should thank them for sharing their story. That's not easy to do. So a few weeks ago, we went on a family vacation. We went to Wilmington, North Carolina, and so all of our, Amy and I and our 4 kids, and then Gabe went with us as well, my future son-in-law, and we were all there together, and having a good week. And one night towards the end of the week, we were in, and we were all tired, so we decided we'd watch a movie. And so it was dark out, and we had all the lights shut off in the house. It was a little bit of a creepy movie. There was a guy trying to hurt somebody. Anyways, it wasn't like a horror movie, but it's kind of creepy. And right at kind of a crescendo moment of creepy, a guy backed into the driveway. So now let me give you some context. So the house we were staying in like an Airbnb deal, Verbo deal, was about a car length off the road. And so it had a little horseshoe drive. We were parked there parallel to the road, and this guy backed in to the house, so he kind of took up the whole section of the driveway, and his back lights were right against our house, which is right by the window as we're watching this creepy movie. At the creepy part of the movie, here's this guy outside. Got everybody shook, right? So we were watching it, so I thought, I'll go check, see what's going on. Just everybody settle down. So I walked outside, and I kind of looked, and I thought, now what am I going to do? Like, I'm outside, what am I going to do? So I walk outside, and it was a nice car, and the guy had his phone out, and I thought, the poor man's lost. He just give him a moment, he'll be fine. So I walked back inside, told everybody to settle down. A few minutes later, he pulled off, no big deal. End of the story. Well, probably 3 or 4 minutes later, at another creepy part in the movie, the same car backs in a second time up against the house. And we thought, okay, this is probably a problem. So I said to them, I'm going to go check this out. Like a tough guy or something, right? So I'm going to go check this out. And Gabe says, I'm going with him. It was like that Christmas vacation moment where the grandpa goes in to get the squirrel. It's a whole thing, like I'm going in with him. So we walk out together, like, what are we going to do, right? So we walk out, and our car was parked here, and he was parked here facing that way. And so I thought, I'm going to walk up between these 2 cars from behind him and scare the water out of this man. I don't want to do that. So I need to so as we're walking out, I grabbed my phone, turned the flashlight on, and started kind of waving it around, thinking I'll let him know I'm coming so he can hear it before I get up there on him. That didn't work. It scared him to death, right, as I walked up. And as we got up right beside the car, in between our van and his car, his window was down, and we noticed a pretty strong scent of marijuana coming out of the car. And as we walked up to the car, I said, hey, and he turns and jumps, and I hear a distinct from the passenger seat. Like, oh, we both instantly do this like a cops and robbers movie. We're both doing this, and we said, hey, we're just wanting to make sure you're okay. Do you need anything at all? And I'm completely oblivious to the fact that I'm walking in on a drug deal. Like, I'm just completely, so I'm like, do you need anything at all? And the guy says, I think I may have had the wrong street address. I said, well, what number are you looking for? Let me help you find the right, like, I'm completely oblivious to what's happening. And he said, I think I found the wrong number. And so he ends up pulling off and driving off, and we call the police, and it's a whole big thing. And we got out of there safely. But here's the thing, we were on the verge of something really dangerous. First time I think I've ever had a gun pulled on me, which is kind of exciting. But we didn't know it. We didn't know we were on the verge of something dangerous. Like, we were in a very dangerous situation, but we weren't aware. Like, we were right on the edge of something happening, and we had no idea it was coming. All it took for Gabe and I, with our keen insights, was somebody cocking a gun and pointing it at us for us to know, okay, we're probably a little dialed into a problem there, right? Now, I don't know. I want to make sure I'm really clear. I'm not prophetic. God's not told me anything. I don't have any of those kind of things. But something tells me that we as a culture are on the verge of something very serious, and we don't know it yet. Like, I think we're potentially on the edge of a very dangerous place in history, and most of us, if not all of us, are just not aware of it. I mean, the last few years have been weird. How many times have you heard the word unprecedented? An unprecedented amount of times you've heard the word unprecedented, and it feels like something's about to give way, like something, the middle's not going to hold here, right? Maybe for the bad, maybe for the good, I don't know, but something's going to change. It feels to me spiritually like a spring that's being tightened, and at some point that's not going to just keep getting tighter. Like at some point, something's going to pop. I think the early church was in a similar spot. They were getting pressure from the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders, but the Romans were mostly staying out of it, and that would all change in just a couple of years after Jesus' resurrection. And the early church would go through unimaginable challenge and torture and difficulty, and I don't know that they knew it. Now, God saw it coming. Maybe a few of the leaders saw it coming. I think most people didn't know it was coming, and if they did, we don't know for sure. If they did they use that time to prepare for it? I think God was probably prompting them to. Did they know that's what was happening? I don't really know. I mean, many of you are in leadership roles at your church. You own your small business, or you're in an executive role, or you're in a middle management role, or whatever. And if you had known on March the 12th, 2020, that the whole world was going to shut down the next day on March 13th, how would have you prepared differently? I mean, as a church, had we known that, we would have bought better cameras more quickly, right? We made moves. I personally would have bought stock in Zoom. Like if I'd have known that was coming, I'd have done that. But we would have prepared differently, right? Had we known. It was just, we didn't see it coming. There was this difficult thing on the horizon, and we got right up next to the edge before we realized we were there. Or if you had known on Monday, September the 10th, 2001, or for that matter, back in June or July of 2001, what was coming in September, you would have prepared your company or your family differently, right? I mean, the whole world changed on that morning, and we didn't see it even just moments ahead of time. I believe the church in America will look back on this season, maybe a few months from now, maybe a few years from now. They're going to look back at this moment and wish that they had taken the chance that we have right now to get ready, to devote ourselves more fully to God during this key season, because of what we're right on the edge of. So I just want to ask you some questions. What would it look like for you individually, or your family, if you're in a family, for you to devote yourself as they did to the things they described? What would it look like if you devoted yourself or your family to the apostles' teaching in this season? You know, we've talked about the last 20 years quite a bit. That's been a picture of our mind from the church. What if you devoted yourself to the apostles' teaching for the next 20? I've heard a lot of you say, I wish I'd have been there at this season in the church or that season in the church. You know, we've only been for a few years. We've came halfway, or we came right when the bill. Like you missed some of the early parts of this thing. Well, you can't change that, but you're part of us now. So devote yourself to God now, going forward in this season. And one of the best ways you can do that is to devote yourself to the apostles' teaching. I mean, what did the apostles talk about? They talked about the core parts of the gospel. They talked about Jesus. They would have talked about his resurrection. Devote yourself to knowing more and more about the things that matter most in Scripture. I saw a study recently online that said you can read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in almost exactly 8 hours. The whole chart, I can post it online or something if you want to see it, but it listed each book in the Bible and how long it would take to read each book. I guess if you're an average reader or something, but 8 hours to get through the Gospels. Most of us have binge watched something longer than 8 hours, right? On Prime or Netflix or whatever you choose. And yet in 8 hours, we can come to know the Lord better, come to know Jesus better. Some of you don't know much about Jesus at all. 8 hours would fix that. You'd know a lot about Jesus then. Some of you know quite a bit about Jesus. You'd know more 8 hours later. Take one of these Bibles. If you don't have a Bible at home that's readable, that makes it easy to understand, maybe you got one of the big family Bibles that's 8 inches thick, it's hard to read, the old Shakespearean, King James stuff. Grab one of these. We'll replace it. We give out hundreds a year. We'd love to give you one. Download a Bible app. I like the YouVersion Bible app. There's others that are great. Use one of those. If you download the YouVersion app, I put this what the picture looks like so you know what you're finding. If you download the YouVersion, there are a lot of Bible reading plans. Pick one of those up. It'll send you reminders. It'll do all of those things for you. But devote yourself to the apostles' teaching, because that devotion is really going to help you going forward. I saw a quote recently. It was talking about working out, which I'm sure applies to that, but I think it applies here as well. It says, if you start working out, in 2 weeks you'll feel it, in 4 weeks you'll see it, and in 8 weeks you'll hear it because other people will see it. And I think that's true spiritually as well. If you devoted yourself to the Word of God, the apostles' teaching, and building that into your life, in 2 weeks you'd feel a difference because you'd know God better. In 4 weeks, you begin to see a difference because you would change the way you do things. In 8 weeks, you'd hear about it because other people would see a change in you and begin to talk to you about just that. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. They also devoted themselves to the fellowship. You need people. They needed people 2,000 years ago. We need people. If anything, this is more true now than it was then. They devoted themselves to the fellowship because they needed people 2,000 years ago. If anything, we need that more now. Mother Teresa once said that loneliness is the leprosy of the modern world. And the antidote for loneliness is fellowship. You need people in your life. And these last years have really challenged that for a whole lot of reasons, but I know that's the case. I want to stop a second, though, because it would be easy at this point for us all to talk about loneliness as if that was something that happened outside of this room or outside of Spring Hill. But the reality is that's not true. I mean, that's just not true. Loneliness is all over our city. You work with people who are grindingly lonely. There are a lot of lonely people in this room right now. Like I told First Service, if you were to rank it 1 to 5, meaning like 1 is you got plenty of friends, never lonely. 2, you do pretty well. 3 is you're kind of, in the middle. 4 and 5, you're really lonely a lot of the time. And somehow a little number would pop over all of our heads. You'd see a lot of 4s and 5s in the room. You might be sitting by a 4 or 5 who's really lonely right now. I'm sure watching online, an hour later, there's some who are really lonely. And what we need for that is fellowship. Fellowship is the antidote for that. You've got to have some people in your life. Look at 1 John. He describes it. 1 John 1 says, if we walk in the light as God is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. This is how you do that. And the blood of Jesus, his son, purifies us from all sin. If you want fellowship in your life, which is the antidote for loneliness, you have to live out in the light. You've got to share beyond just the surface. You can't hang out in the shadows relationally with people. You've got to let people in. And that takes time. You don't open up immediately. And that takes intentionality because if it happened automatically, you would already have it. You wouldn't have to think about it. It would already be automatically done. It takes some intentionality. If it happened automatically, we wouldn't have any lonely people in our world. That's just not where we are. You've got to let people in. Satan does his best work in the shadows, in pretense, in secrecy, in lies. And God does his best work out in the light when people live authentically and loving towards one another. You need people. We all need people. Look at the early church. Acts chapter 4, just a few chapters after what I read earlier, says all the believers were in one in heart and mind. They were in fellowship with one another. They had devoted to that. It says no one claimed that any of his possessions was their own, but they shared everything that they had. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there were no needy persons among them. They had no welfare system at that point. They had no government agency. They had no elaborate administrative system. God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all because they were interconnected. They were experiencing fellowship to where they knew what was going on in the other person's life. And when one person had a need, others jumped in and fixed it. And that certainly applies to physical things. That's kind of the priority of what's describing here. But I think it applied to a lot more than that. When you need a shoulder to cry on, somebody's there. When you need some extra prayer, somebody's there. When you need some help with your kids, somebody's there. When you're not sure you can make it on further, you've got people in your life. That's fellowship. I mean, what would happen if you let us help you get some people? We would love to help you get some people. I think if you did that in 2 weeks, you'd feel a difference. And in 4 weeks, you begin to see a difference in your life. And in 8 weeks, other people would see it and you'd begin to hear about it because it would make such a difference to you. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship. They devoted themselves to the breaking of bread. Now, this refers to what we do with communion, but it was much more than just receiving the elements of communion like we do. I mean, it's probably tied to a meal at that point. And if you're looking at the early church, you would be surprised. If you look back in history, you'd be shocked probably at how people focused, what they focused on during the services. They did a lot of the same things we do during a service, but they focused on different parts than we do. People's focus in the early church wasn't, today the focus might be on the sermon, And that's, reasonable since it's such a high quality. Like that would make sense to focus on the sermon. That's not what they focused on. They didn't focus on the kids' programs. They didn't focus on the worship time. Like I like this song, or I like that hymn, or I like that particular brand of music. They didn't focus on any of those things like we do now. I remember when we first started the church, we had so many people who were just new to faith and they didn't have a church background and all of those things. And I remember talking to some of our kind of a core group, and there was a lady on the team who was just kind of new to all of it, and she had some friends that she was talking to, and she mentioned about her church because she's so excited about that, and they were all going to different churches, and they were all part of some bigger churches up in Franklin and Brentwood and such, and this is 20 years ago, and they were talking about the country music artists and the Christian music artists that attended their churches, different churches. And they'd say, well, so-and-so, goes to our church, and so-and-so leads worship at our church, and so-and-so plays in the band at our church, and all this. And we didn't have any people like that. Like, we had nobody fancy in our church at all. We're meeting in an elementary school. We had none of that. And she said, it got me so upset, and she was getting defensive. And she said, I wanted to tell them, well, Jesus goes to my church. I don't know about all of your folks, but Jesus. And she's like, the early church just didn't focus on any of that. The early church's focus, the highlight, the crescendo of the morning was communion. Because it was when individual believers who had been separated all week, but had the Holy Spirit living in them, were trying to follow God in their own individual lives, when they would come together in community, which was celebrated through communion, that was the high point of the whole service. They were under pressure to yield their faith, to compromise, to be discipled by culture more than the Bible, more than their truth, more than God, more than the Lord. And so they were devoted to coming together weekly, to be together, to connect with each other. And communion was the outpouring of that, but it was the togetherness that they focused on. And in some ways, so many things are different about us today. We have, technology they wouldn't have dreamed of. We have educational opportunities and travel opportunities and communication opportunities, freedom. So they had no idea, like they would have no idea what we live in. And yet in some ways, nothing has changed. We're under pressure like they were to yield our faith, to compromise, to be discipled by culture more than the Lord. So we must be devoted to coming together weekly. We all spread out in the community, into our busy lives, into our homes, into our neighborhoods, into our jobs. We got to come back and reestablish, not just for the sermon, not just for the kids program, not just for the music, that's all fine, great, but to be together, to be devoted to the breaking of bread, if you will. We need that. I've noticed over the years that certain people, when they're going through stuff, so maybe they've lost a loved one that's really close to them, or maybe they've had a financial hardship or a divorce. Maybe their kids are going through it. Different people go through different things, but when somebody's really going through it, I've noticed that they'll say some of the same things to me over and over. They'll say something along the lines of, I just got to get there on Sunday. I just got to be with people. I've got to have the church around me. I need the church. And often I'll hear them say they do something midweek to bridge that gap. So they'll find a life group that's on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, so it's midweek. They can get that refill. They got to have people around them, right? Or they'll come and start helping out on Wednesday night not just to be with the kids. That's great, but they want to be here to be in the church, to be with people because they're just desperate for that because their life is hard. It's coming at them. And I've not as often heard that from people whose life's not coming at them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a guilt thing. It's just I've not always heard that from people who are just going through normal stuff. Life is just normal. Everything's going normal. Like, it's only when we're really under it that we cling to that. And I think if we could somehow figure out how to motivate ourselves to be devoted to that, be zealous about that, to cling to that when life wasn't coming at us, man, I think it would change dramatically our realities. We need that with each other. Some of you, by the way, I'd be remiss again. I was talking to somebody in between services, and they were struggling with what I'm saying. Not because necessarily they disagreed with it, but their life is just so busy and full. They got jobs and young kids and laundry and the house and stuff, and they said, you're just adding more things to my already full to-do list. And they're tearing up, and they're just struggling because. And I said to them, what I wish I'd have said first hour, let me say to you, I want you to know that the things I'm asking you to do, the scripture's describing, God is enough for you. If you feel like life's coming at you right now, God's enough for you. I'm not trying to add more things to your already overfull to-do list. I want you to know that there's hope and healing and faith, but God's got that. It's not because you've done enough or you've earned it. God is enough for you, no matter what you go through. But especially if life's coming at you, you need the church. If coming to church regularly has not been part of your regular routine, what would happen if you committed to coming together weekly, regularly, and being part of that? I think in a couple weeks you'd feel it. I think in a month or so you'd see a difference in your life. In a couple of months you'd hear about it because people will be saying, man, you just seem like you're in a different place, that your headspace is different. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, the breaking of bread, and lastly, they devoted themselves to prayer. Literally, the Greek is the prayers because they prayed often. And I want to make sure you catch this because this is kind of a subpoint of the whole message today. The early church prayed often because life was hard. And we pray often when life is hard. But if we could convince ourselves to pray often, just as we're going through life, as we're on our commute, as we're getting the kids in and out of the bathtub, whatever it is, we're just praying to God constantly. If we could convince ourselves to pray often before life got hard, before we were maxed out, before we felt overwhelmed, we would experience God in a whole new realm, I think. We want to help you out with all this. We've been going through as our part of our celebration multiple events to kind of highlight the church and what we've been about and let you be part of that. I told you we're going to build 3 houses next weekend. That's really cool. Or Scott mentioned that. That's cool. The weekend after that, we're going to focus on prayer. So on that Friday, November the 10th, I'm going to say that multiple times so you catch it. Friday, November the 10th, we're going to come together here for a worship night, 7 o'clock at night. I want to challenge all of you to show up for that. I know some can't for whatever reason. You're out of town or kids' bedtime or whatever. I get all that, but I'm asking if you're able to, for 100% of us, if you're in town and you're able to do that, come out to that because there's something about that that's going to be powerful for us to come in here together. And both services together, it's probably going to be a pretty full room, which will be cool. And we're going to have not another sermon, we're going to have a time of worship together, extended time of that, extended time of prayer as a church to call out to God. And that's going to start a 40-hour prayer event. Now, no one was going to be praying for 40 hours. I mean, you could, but that's not what we're asking. We're asking as a church together, different spots here and there, we're going to pray for 40 hours. From Friday night at 7, it's kicking off that event, all the way till Sunday morning at 9, 40 straight hours, we're going to have somebody, at least 3 people in this building praying to God together. 40 is a big number in the Bible. Rick Warren says that Noah's life was transformed by 40 days of rain. Moses was transformed by 40 days on Mount Sinai. The spies were transformed by 40 days in the Promised Land. David was transformed by Goliath's challenge for 40 days. Elijah was transformed by 40 days with God from the strength of a single meal. Nineveh was transformed by 40 days to repent when God offered that. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness after he was baptized, and the disciples were revolutionized by 40 days of the resurrected Lord before he ascended. There's something about the number 40. And we're going to pray for 40 straight hours to God, at least 3 people throughout the night, from 7 o'clock Friday night all the way till Sunday morning at 9. So we're going to need you to sign up ahead of time to make sure we have 3 people covering that whole stretch. So I want to walk you through how to do that. If you have the app, if you don't, you should get the app. That's going to be helpful to you. Go to the sign up button at the bottom there, and when you click that, find 40 hours of prayer, click on that. You'll read a little bit more about the event itself, and then you'll have an opportunity to sign up for a 30-minute slot. Now, we're going to need a lot of prayers. Not prayers, we need that too, but prayers. We're going to need a lot of that. So some of you, if you're praying people, prayer's your deal. We're going to need you to pray for more than 30-minute slot. Let me just help the non-math majors in the room to get a sense of this. So if we have 40 hours of prayer, 2 30-minute slots per hour, at least 3 people per slot, hopefully more. That's 240 slots. I'm going to need your help. Okay, so some of you are going to have to pray for more than 1 slot and that would be great. Now, others of you are saying 30 minutes of prayer. I don't know how to pray for 30 minutes. Good gracious. I've never done that in my life. We're going to provide tools for you, prompts of things you can pray over and with and through. You're going to run out of time before you run out of ideas of what to talk to God about. I promise you we'll help with that. But that's going to be great. And then that next Sunday, the same weekend, on the 12th, we're going to end that 40 hours of continuous prayer by canceling our 9 and 10:45 services here, so 2 Sundays from now. We're going to meet at 10 o'clock, so kind of split the middle between the 2 services, and we're going to meet at 8 separate locations. 4 around Spring Hill, 1 of them being here, 1 spot in Columbia, 3 nursing homes in Spring Hill. The reason we're dividing out is because we're going to go to those locations for a small service, a short time of worship together, a short devotional together, communion together, and then we're going to divide from those locations. If you were here last week, you heard us talk about this. We're going to divide and go into our neighborhoods, so hopefully it's one of those locations that's close to your neighborhood. You can go to your neighborhoods, to your homes, and walk the neighborhoods, not knocking on doors. Please, for the love of all that's holy, do not knock on a door. But if you see somebody out watering their grass, walking the dog, working the flower beds, say hi, be nice, talk to them, pray for them, offer to pray for them. Tell them what we're doing and why we're doing it. Just pray for the community. Now, 8 locations in 2 cities. I'm going to need you to sign up for that too. So you can go to the app. Underneath the 40 hours of prayer, you can click on and find a location and let us know you're going to be there, one close to your home. We'll walk the neighborhoods and pray in 2 weeks. Now, what would happen? What would happen if we did this? I'm not talking about for the church. I'm talking about for you. What would happen in your life if you moved some things around, gave up something, canceled something, decided to focus some time so that you could devote your family for this season to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayer? I think in 2 weeks you'd feel a difference. I think in 4 weeks you'd see differences in your life and in your relationship and in your family. I think in 8 weeks you'd hear it because other people would begin to tell you what they see in you. And that's not really that long from now. To end today, I want to look at a verse together. Hebrews 11:6 says, "For we come to God in faith, knowing that He is real and that He rewards the faith of those who passionately seek Him." We come to God in faith, knowing He's real. He rewards the faith of those who passionately seek Him. I know that God is real. If you don't have that confidence, if you don't know that God is real, I'd love to help you. There are reasons to believe. You don't have to check your brain at the door to have faith. You don't have to disregard your science to have faith. You don't have to set aside reason or logic to have faith. I'd love to talk to you about that. I know that God is real, and I believe strongly that He rewards our faith when we passionately seek Him. I know that from a lifetime of doing it. I know that here from 20 years of us doing it. I know it from time and again where we've sought the Lord and He's shown up. If you don't have that experience where you reach out to God in passion and faith and fervency, and others did it with you and you saw God show up, I want you to come along for this ride, because He's going to do it again. I believe that to be true, and I want you to experience it with us. I mean, I know some of you really need that right now. You're going through it, and you need to have people passionately praying for you because you don't have the time or faith to do it yourself. We'd love to be there with you. I know you need us to bring the apostles' teaching to you because it's new to you, or you need people to wrap around you and to protect you from the world by being the church. We'd love to do that with you. I want you to bow your head and let me pray with you and for you. Dear Lord, I pray that you would inspire us away from hurt, away from distraction, away from all the other opportunities that come at us, encouraging us to deny or to compromise our faith. God, I pray that you draw those to you who need you right now. Life has pushed you away, or they have pushed you away, and they need you, God, to draw them close. I pray for our church. as we seek to devote you, to prepare for whatever it is that lies ahead that we don't know, but you see coming. I pray that you prepare us as families, as individuals, to follow you more fully, just as the church did after you came. We know you're real, God. We know you'll reward us as we passionately seek you. And we do that together in the name of Jesus.